I deserve jail time. I can't help myself. I literally can't help myself. Wait a minute! I actually went through a long time where I didn't buy any books, and I was being really good about it. And then, I don't know, this past weekend and the weekend before, I just went nuts. Welcome. My name's Catherine. I'm a big dumb dummy, and I like to buy books. It's been a while since I've done a book haul, like a big proper book haul, so yay. Welcome to my channel. Have a seat. Let's revel in how stupid I am, because I have so many books I haven't read yet, and yet I was like, oh no, we need more. So I have two stacks, these two discrete stacks, which I'm not buff enough to hold these up with one arm each. This isn't a reason to go to the gym, I don't know what is. I went to two bookstores in Chicago, two very well-known used bookstores. This stack is from Heirloom Books in, I guess, Eduardo, Rogers Park area. Great bookstore, teeny tiny, but they always have really good selection. And I don't go in there often because their hours don't usually line up with when I can go. But then when I do go, I'm like, oh right, this is why I'm really not allowed to come here, because there's just too many good books. Then where I got these was Ravenswood Used Books in Ravenswood, Chicago. I had never been there before. My boyfriend and I go like to check out little bookstores that we've never been to. So we were like, oh, we've never been to this one, let's see. Also, like, teeny tiny, like, I was like basically crawling through the aisles, like stacked with books, and they had some great stuff, so I had to kind of stop myself. I would have gotten more, but I had to stop myself. So thought I would just go quickly through all the books I got. I'm really trying to make these videos a little bit quicker because I tend to ramble, so we're trying. So we're just gonna quickly breeze through the books that I got, because we all have lives and jobs and things we need to do. Okay, great. The first one that I have is the Autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman by Ernest J. Gaines. I've been very curious about this book. I haven't seen it anywhere, which is why I definitely wanted to pick it up. It's about a woman who basically she's a black woman in America who lives through major periods of American history. It's about just one woman. So she lives through slavery all the way up until the civil rights movement. So she's definitely, those eyes, she's seen some shit. It just seems like it's a very, very interesting book. I'm excited to pick this up. I don't know much more about it other than that. This is the movie version, which usually I don't care for editions that are the movie versions. So yeah, Autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman, Ernest J. Gaines. I really don't know, we're just gonna see. Next is one that's been on my list for a really long time. It's Vanity Fair by William Thackeray. I love this edition. I really love like the old orange penguin editions, because I just feel like this art just really sums up what this is gonna be. It's just kind of chaotic. So this is basically just about England during the Napoleonic Wars. It's about Becky Sharp, who's like kind of this ruthless female character, which on this channel we really love ruthless female characters. That's really what I'm interested in. As Thackeray wrote, there is a great quantity of eating and drinking, making love and jilting, laughing and the contrary, smoking, cheating and fighting, dancing and fiddling. There are bullies pushing about, bucks ogling the women, knaves picking pockets, policemen on the lookout, quacks bawling in front of their booths, and yokels looking up at the tinselled dancers and poor old rouged tumblers. Sign me up! It's gonna be a good old Victorian romp, and we also stand that on this channel. This next one, shout out to like one of the kinkiest covers I've ever seen. It's Denis Diderot, I should say, The Nun. If you see this at the store and you don't want to pick this up, like, come on. It's a nun whipping a man. It's basically about this woman, which the back of the book says, the joke that got out of hand and resulted in one of the most remarkable novels of the 18th century, which also is intriguing. It's basically about this woman who is sort of forced to join a convent, and the consequences of that, which is fascinating, because I think that happened a lot to women, but I think this is kind of satirical, a little bit over the top. I mean, this cover, it's just like, I saw this, I'm like, I need to know. This has actually been on my list for a little bit, so I was happy to find it. Diderot takes issue with misconceived Christianity in a social system where the civil law protects the persecutor and penalizes the victim. relevant, yes. So I'm excited to pick this one up. I think it should be interesting. I don't know. Next is one, I actually own this book already, but I have it in the really nice penguin cloth bound version, and I find I just don't really like to read from those versions because the ink on them does rub off. Like if you keep fingering it, which I really shouldn't have said that, we should probably edit that out. If you keep touching it, it kind of wears away. So I have it on, like, I have it in my, like, front room as, like, kind of decoration, but I don't really want to, like, read from it. And it's such a heavy book that I wanted more of just a paperback that I was a little bit less precious with. So I found it, and it is also an old Penguin Classics, but it's like that old black spine, which I really like. It's George Eliot Middlemarch. I don't know if I said that before. It's George Eliot Middlemarch. Bitch. I mean, what is this book about? You know what? I don't even know. It's really just about the town of Middlemarch, which I believe is a fictional town in England. Again, this is just like classic Victorian novels, and the more I'm reading, because I read a lot of Victorian novels, but the more I read about Victorian novels, the more this one pops up, and the more times I see people saying that, like, it's the quintessential, not even just Victorian novel, but like novel in the English language. And it's been on my list for literally years. I read The Mill on the Floss a long time ago and loved it, and so I was always like, yes, we'll eventually get to Middlemarch. But I mean, look at this. She's thick. Like, she's very thick. So I was always like, I'll get to it. But we're not doing that anymore. Right now I'm reading David Copperfield, and that is also one since I think literally freshman year of high school. Been like, I'm gonna read that, and I've had it, and now I'm like, finally, like, we're doing it. And I know that the same will happen with Middlemarch, because it's supposed to be one of the best. So, and then I've been very interested. I've never read anything by this author, but I've been doing my research, and I've been reading and looking. I've been more and more interested to pick him up, and it's Anthony Trollope, The Way We Live Now. He wrote 2 separate series. They're books that, you know, it's kind of a loose series. I don't think you have to read them sequentially, or you have to read one to get to the other. It's loose, but they're all part of this, they're occupying the same world. So there's 2 series. This one, though, is just a standalone Anthony Trollope. This is just a standalone story. And it's The Way We Live Now. In this world of bribes and vendettas, swindling and suicide, in which heiresses are won like gambling stakes, Trollope's characters embody all the vices. Lady Carberry, a 43-year-old coquette, false from head to foot. Her son Felix, with the instincts of a horse, not approaching the higher sympathies of a dog. And Melmotte, the colossal figure who dominates the book, a horrid, big, rich scoundrel, a bloated swindler, a vile city ruffian. Sign me up, that sounds like fun. Again, another big book, but also the print is much larger than what is usually in these books. So it's actually 71. That's not bad. That's not bad. As far as Victorians go, that's actually pretty concise. So I'm excited. And then this is a nonfiction. I have been really interested in reading this book. It's not for lack of trying, but I just haven't really been able to find this book. I was going to order it because I don't know, like, for some reason, when I think about what the books I want to read for later this year, which is another video that'll come soon, like books that I want to get to in this year, I go off of book clubs, of course, but it really is going off of feeling, like just a gut instinct of like, I think it's time to read that book. And in terms of this book, that's definitely the case. I've been like, for some reason, something is calling to me. Something about this book is calling to me. And it's The Band Played On by Randy Shilts. Again, I'm just going for some mammoths here. Politics, People, and the AIDS Epidemic. I just am very interested in the AIDS epidemic and reading at this point about it, just because there's been some distance from it. I mean, globally, the AIDS epidemic is still raging. It's still going on. People are still affected. I'm just interested in how in American history it really shocked the nation. And I mean, we're also coming out of pandemic ourselves, and how we handled this pandemic was very different to how we handled this pandemic, or how we didn't handle this pandemic, more like it. And being in theater, AIDS is just a topic that always comes up, because theater was an industry that was greatly affected by the deaths and the epidemic. It's always something that comes up either in plays, in musicals. If you've ever seen Rent, it's obviously a big theme. And just in literature and in writing. What?
Oh, are you filming?
Yeah, I'm filming. Just I think a good foundational text to take you through what it was like at this time when this was all breaking. It just seemed awful, and I just want a better understanding of what happened. It's basically a modern classic about this very particular topic. So, and the band played on. Only fun reads on here. We're reading about AIDS. Okay, well, those are all the books from Heirloom Books. This little haul is from Ravenswood Used Books. It's your man, again, Anthony Trollope. I'm like collecting Anthony Trollope, but I still haven't read any of my Anthony Trollope books. My first book haul that I did on YouTube from the library, I got Can You Forgive Her, which was from the one series, the first book from that series. This is the first book from the other series, the Chronicles of Barsetshire series. Will I read them? I'm not really a series person. Will I read them all? I don't know. I think we're going to have to read the first one, and see how it goes. So this is The Warden, Anthony Trollope. Again, the old school orange penguins. It's basically, it tells the story of Mr. Harding, an elderly clergyman, warden of an almshouse for old men, who resigns his church, sinecure, when it becomes the center of public controversy. So yeah, it's basically about this clergyman who becomes involved in a scandal and the ramifications that has for his daughter. The Warden. I know, looks like a real fun one. It's a nice short one though, which is unusual for the Victorians. 185 pages. Okay. So this is one I think I want to get to probably later, like late in this year. I'm really starting to plan and being better about planning my reads, and so we'll get to this one, but probably not until later in the year because I think I just keep collecting Anthony Trollope, but I'm not getting to him. So we gotta get to him. The next is one actually I was really excited to find because I have not been able to find this, and I didn't think I'd be able to find this unless I ordered it online. So when I saw it at the store in the Asian literature section, I was like, okay, great. And it is The Dream of the Red Chamber. Originally, they couldn't figure out who wrote this, and this edition doesn't have the writer on here because they eventually did figure it out. So I'll leave the name of the author here. It's the first realistic novel in Chinese from the 18th century. It's what I've heard, it's kind of like a Romeo and Juliet story between these two families. To be honest, I really have not read any Chinese literature. It's something I'm very interested in, but I've never read any like works from China. And so if this is one of the first realistic novel in Chinese, I'm very interested. And apparently, I mean, reading on the back of this as well, it was apparently they couldn't get this translated into English very well for like a very long time. So this is like a classic in China. I'm sure this is one that like students have to read, and it's canon, but like to Western audiences, it was just not available for a while. But luckily, it has now been translated. I don't know why, but I just like love the size of this book too. Like when books are like this size, it's just so satisfying. And it's got like a nice little bendy spine, and it also has the woodcut illustrations as well. So, Dream of the Red Chamber. We're excited to read this one. This one was a little bit more expensive at the bookstore as well, probably because it's not very easy to find, or like not very popular. Next, we have Margaret Atwood's Blind Assassin. I have not read Handmaid's Tale yet. Funny story, I was about to read Handmaid's Tale. Like, I was literally like, yeah, I have a feeling, like, this is the book I'm gonna read next. I had that gut instinct, like, we're gonna read The Handmaid's Tale. And then literally the next day, Roe versus Wade got turned over. I was like, actually, I don't think I can pick that up right now. It was so bizarre. And I think it was a gut instinct telling me that was gonna happen, because my gut was telling me something. So we haven't read The Handmaid's Tale yet. It's been a little too raw, but it's also one that I'm like, no, this year I'm finally going to get to it. But this is another Margaret Atwood book that I've heard nothing but good things about. Apparently it's like a novel within a novel, and it's set in the 40s? Yes, in the 40s. So it like starts off as like kind of a normal narrative, and then all of a sudden it leads you into a novel, which I always love when books are able to do that. I think I would never be able to write something like that, but I'm always impressed when people are able to do something like that. Or just stories within stories within stories, which a good example of that is Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell. He does it beautifully. So if this has kind of that feeling to it, where it like kind of expertly weaves two stories together, I'm going to be very happy. But I've heard nothing but good things about this, and so I have had it on my list, and it's been of interest for me for a while, so I was glad I found it. And then we have two nonfictions, because, you know, I can't help myself. I love nonfiction. The first one is Open Veins of Latin America by Eduardo Galeano. Galeano? Shows how much I know. Open Veins of Latin America. So this is basically examining Latin American history through how its natural resources have been exploited, which the author argues are like the veins of the countries. Particularly its gold, coffee, and copper that he's going to focus on. How Europeans exploited the people and the lands of these natural resources, and how it has affected Latin American politics and instability since. I'm super excited to read this. It's been on my list for a bit, and there's just some like very interesting people who are on the cover of this book. Apparently, Hugo Chavez, president of Venezuela, says it's a great book. Arundhati Roy, who I love because she wrote The God of Small Things, and she's known for a lot of her political work, especially like her environmental and political work. So she's on here, and Isabel Allende, who wrote Eva Luna, which I loved from last year and didn't mention in my previous video. She does the introduction. And I never read the introduction, but this time I will read the introduction because Isabel Allende wrote it. So again, Latin American, sort of like with the AIDS epidemic, it's like something I, in passing, learned about or know about, but I just want to do a deeper dive on. I really always, when we would focus on Latin American history in history class in school, I was always interested in it, but I never spent too much time on it. So, yeah. And the last one is maybe truly the book that's been on my TBR on Goodreads the longest. Like, it might be the one that's been on the list the longest since I've had the Goodreads account, which just tells you, like, my priorities are just, they're a little out of whack. It's Ross King's The Judgement of Paris, the revolutionary decade that gave the world Impressionism. If this Manet painting is not one of your favorites, what are you doing? It's just so, like, why is she naked? Why is she naked? I love art history. I love reading about it. I love research, like doing my own little research on it. It was something that I kind of kicked myself for in college. I took like the very intro art history class, and it was so much Egyptian and like ancient art, and there's so much memorization that I got kind of scared off from art history. But then later, junior year, I took like a Klimt van Gogh class, and I was like, oh, I should have been an art history major, because I loved researching about it and writing about it, and I realized I probably should have majored in it. Too late, but never too late to go back to school, maybe to go for art history, because I love it, and I have a special place in my heart for the Impressionists, because we would learn about them a lot in French class, and then I also learned about them more in just like one-off classes I took in college. Not necessarily my favorite art, but art movement I find it to be very interesting. So this is about how basically the decade gave birth to the Impressionists, like why they wouldn't have existed necessarily if the decade that they came about in wasn't happening. Judgement of Paris chronicles the dramatic decade between two famous exhibitions, the scandalous Salon de Refusés in 1863 and the first Impressionist showing in 1874, set against the splendor of Napoleon III's Second Empire and its dramatic fall after the Franco-Prussian War. You got a lot of bloodshed going on, but then you also have like revolutionary art being made. And a lot of the templates in here are showing a lot of Manet paintings, so I guess Manet is going to be kind of the focus. Even though of the Impressionists, I mean, I really like Manet, but I find him to be like the least impressionist-y of the Impressionists. Like Monet went way out there in terms of abstraction to the point at the end of his life when he was just doing those haystacks. It just felt like abstract art. Whereas Manet always felt a little bit more, like he always felt a little bit more realistic. So it's got some nice colored plates in the middle. Oh, I love this one. The railway. I love art history because it just shows you so much about the culture and the time through such beautiful paintings. I love going to the Art Institute in Chicago. Is one of my favorite places. So I think once I read this, I'm going to have to go check out some works. I guess I'm going to have to go back to the permanent Impressionist galleries. So sue me. Well, that's it. It is what it is. I don't think you can stop me. I don't think you can stop me. When will I get to these? I don't know. There are so many books on my shelves right now that are crying to be read. And a lot of these books aren't even ones, except for And the Lamp Played On, are not part of my list of like books I want to get to in 2023, which again is a video that is upcoming. So I don't know why I do this to myself. I don't know why I do it. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Subscribe if you feel like it. If you don't, you can come and go. Yeah. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.